So maybe I should back up and ask you, what exactly is programmatic advertising?
Now it gets complicated. um, but to try and simplify things a little bit,
Yeah.
what I tried to do is just put together like 2 or 3 slides that
Okay.
hopefully would communicate the message. Let me just try sharing my screen, and
Okay.
hopefully this goes well. So give me a
Yeah.
sec.
Okay. I think that would be helpful.
Um, yeah. Cool. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes, perfect.
Yes.
So, if we just look at how programmatic has evolved, or even like where what was the genesis really? There initially, long time ago, like when all of us were a lot younger, you had an opportunity for publishers to reach out to advertisers, right? So you'd have
Mhm.
someone reaching out from a New York Times to Unilever or P&G and say, hey, like I have ad spots on my website. Would you like to advertise to my audience, right? So you had a sales team going across to either the brand or to the agency and saying, well, like would you like to work with us? And that was great. That was fantastic. Except as you started going along, there's a whole bunch of publishers, there's a whole bunch of brands and agencies, and all of a sudden you have sales teams from one side reaching out to the other, advertisers and agencies saying, hey, like I need to get through to multiple publishers. And obviously it started becoming really, really complicated, right? You have so many people to maintain contact with.
Mhm.
So along came this whole concept called an ad network, right? So what an ad network did was essentially to aggregate, like publishers from one side. They'd go and talk to multiple publishers, usually mid and long tail, but also some of the leading publishers, and say, well, we will now, like group different publishers, potentially by vertical, by geography, like a whole
Mhm.
bunch of different things, whatever makes business sense. And then we'll package that together and go and sell that to the advertiser now, right? So initially it was just aggregation. Then as we went along, like networks were being asked to deliver performance as well, whether that's click-through rates or that's leads or sales and so on, right? So this was the next logical step in the evolution. Once we went along from there, as a next step, and this is probably the one slide that'll get a teeny bit technical, but I promise that's about it. Um, so publishers and advertisers started using what's known as an ad server. Probably the most prominent examples of these are what used to be known as DoubleClick Campaign Manager and DoubleClick for publishers. So
Mhm.
publisher side and advertiser side ad servers. And what these ad servers did, if you start from the publisher side, is that it would broadcast that call to an exchange slash supply side platform, right? And the supply side platform would say, hey, I'm now going to push this call out to a whole bunch of different demand side platforms, DSPs. And that DSP is essentially just listening to every single ad spot that's coming up across the internet, right? So advertisers can then say, well, here's like a subset of impressions that are relevant to me. So I'm going to bid on that specific spot. So if you've heard the terms real-time bidding, you have heard the term auctions, this is really how it happens in the internet space. And this overall is really the programmatic chain, right? There's obviously more layers to this if you really want to delve into it, but just simplified down to its nuts and bolts, this is what it looks like, right? One thing to keep in mind is that none of these are exclusive, right? So it's not like programmatic does away with ad networks or ad networks did away with the direct sale from publisher to advertiser. It's just that all three of them are different channels you can use in order to get through to the publisher from one end to the other end. And that's how you get your message across to your audience, right? So hopefully this gives you a sense of what programmatic is and kind of how this whole ecosystem fits together.